Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Asif Bayramov and Robert Olberg join us to talk about Asif's book, Azerbaijani Jews in Sports, Second Edition. Now, Robert is from Estonia. He's translating for Asif. Asif is a Muslim born in Armenia. Now, religious persecution forced his family to flee to Azerbaijan, where they found religious freedom. And in his book, Asif makes the case for the one thing that unites all of us: sports. Explain what you do.
Я открыл спортивную компанию, работаю в своей компании, пишу книгу.
So he opened up his own sports company. That's where he's employed full-time and mostly in developing his manuscripts for his next editions.
What's the name of the sports company?
American Sport A+.
And what does it do?
Написание книги, все спортивное, вот то, что вот относится.
So the company is focused on developing and teaching adolescents and children in sports sciences, the physical aspects of sport. Asif himself being a master of the judo black belt. But another aspect of the company is it works on these manuscripts and getting that information out.
This manuscript, Azerbaijani Jews in Sports, Second Edition, it was written
back in November of 1988 is when he first started developing the thoughts for this book.
What inspired those thoughts?
Yeah, it all stemmed from his and his family's deportation from Armenia to Azerbaijan on religious grounds. And so he settled in Baku city, which overall is a multicultural city. And he lived there up until the point where he emigrated here to the United States. Having lived in Azerbaijan, he was able to see firsthand how this country in particular was much more open to various faiths, specifically the Jewish faith, and how this country did not have the same level of discrimination and hatred and overall anti-Semitism as many of the other kind of neighboring Muslim countries. And so he was inspired by the fact that when these Jewish people begin to immigrate into Armenia, they kind of not only got involved in the sciences and the national culture of the country, but they heavily got rooted in the sports portion, which he himself is personally passionate about. Every aspect of sport: boxing, gymnastics, chess, volleyball.
So all sports.
Really every aspect of sport, yeah, from the physical to the intellectual.
Азербайджан подарил миру 5 олимпийских чемпионов еврейской национальности.
And Azerbaijan has kind of granted to the world 5 gold medalists of Jewish descent.
Из них двукратно есть олимпийские чемпионы по волейболу, женщин, Инна Рыскал.
2 of them being females that played volleyball.
Does he talk about what he witnessed in Azerbaijan?
So he saw firsthand the hatred, the intolerance that led this group of people, that being the Jews, out of surrounding countries into Armenia, and how Armenia as a whole was open to receiving this cultural background. He saw how they began to integrate into the culture and served as an example to the world on how multiculturally people could coexist peacefully and work towards one end, one goal, and strive towards a successful nation together. And how, to everyone's surprise, being a Muslim country, Azerbaijan was able to give them a certain aspect societally that allowed them to thrive, bringing examples of various, not just one and not focusing on anyone, but bringing about examples of various different athletes like Galina Urbanovic, for example, who participated in volleyball and earned for herself, being of Jewish descent, but representing the country of Azerbaijan in the Helsinki Olympics, earned herself a gold medal. So small examples like that, but the book in itself is not focused on himself. It's not focused on any one athlete, but it talks about the broad text of how the Jewish people were able to call the country of Azerbaijan a home for themselves, and further went on nationalistically to represent this country to the rest of the world in events such as the Olympics.
Is that still the case?
То есть Азербайджан единственная страна в мире, где нет антисемитизма.
Yes, Azerbaijan is one of the only countries in the world right now where there isn't a profound sense of anti-Semitism that we even have begun to see here in the United States.
Никогда не было на евреев гонений в Азербайджане.
There was never any sort of persecution against the Jews in Azerbaijan.
Таких фактов не замечено.
We just don't see that in this country, which is profound considering the Muslim background. There's even a city in the country of Azerbaijan that Jewish people call the Second Jerusalem.
What does he want readers to get out of this book?
To get that same profound love and admiration for sport that he has overall, and to see how sport in itself can unite people that otherwise this world would say shouldn't be able to coexist.
He must be extremely disturbed by what's been going on in this country.
Yeah, he is. And he mentions this in that we're seeing a certain level of anti-Semitism on the rise in this country that we've never had before.
No, not that we've never had before. We haven't had in a long time.
In a long time, that's right.
So the original book was written in the 80s, and now he's redone it and re-released it now. Why now?
So it's no secret that the current events are a true inspiration as to why this book needs to come out now and why people need to read it now. It serves as an educational tool for students of all ages towards ambassadors and leaders of various nations on why it's so important that we come together with unity now despite our background. The first edition of this book was written, he had sent a copy to the president of Israel at that time, being President Isaac Herzog, who then responded with a letter to him and gave him further motivation to redevelop the book and add to its original content. And that letter is mentioned in the first pages of this new edition.
Не исключено, что будет третье издание.
And it goes without saying that there will be a third edition that he's presently working on.
Is he able to go out and talk about his book?
So he primarily visits book fairs, scholastic fairs, schools. He goes to Jewish cultural centers that he gets rooted in as well, and he shares the context of his book.
That's awesome.
И Ассоциация библиотек Америки, там буду презентовать.
And he's also going to have a set presentation at the Association of Libraries here in the United States.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for taking the time to talk to me today. And thank you for translating.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
A serious health issue forced Ronald Devera into early retirement and an unbreakable bond with God. The name of his book, Life Experience Leading to Hell and Back to God. Ron, what happened?
Well, I had my 2008 is when I had the open heart surgery and I died on the operating table.
How do you know you died?
Because I went to hell.
Why do you think that happened?
Because the demons and everything I saw. I had made a video about it originally with my friend, and we put it out on the internet there for a little while, and then it got taken down. He took it down for some reason. I don't know what. And so, you know, I was thinking about maybe I should write a book about my experience and stuff like that so I can maybe help people understand. We're all in basically the same boat and all that. We've all are sinners. We've all commit sin, and give them a chance to maybe to find God like I did.
How long were you dead?
I'm not sure how long I was. I know it was a while because the operation lasted. It was supposed to only last about 8, and I think they told me it almost went 15 hours. Plus, they had to take me back 3 other days. I think they said they took me back into the operation room to do more stuff.
You were in your 40s?
Yeah.
What happened to your heart that you had to have that kind of a procedure?
In 2000, I think was my first heart attack I had. And then like every 2 years I would have them. And then finally in 2014, I had a really big one. And it took my heart down to around 20% function. So basically put me on a commission. I couldn't work anymore because I was just getting tired all the time. I had to sleep a lot. And 40 years old when it actually happened, when I had the heart attack. I was 40. When I talk about it, I talk about my life from the beginning, when I was a young kid and all that. And I explain, because when I was younger, I knew God. And over different things that happened, I lost that over a girl and stuff. Eventually, I basically became like a holiday person who just went to church on holidays and that, because I saw things too that I didn't like in that was happening in the churches and that I saw. And I really didn't read my Bible like I should have done. And after I died and all that, the thing I learned was that we have to pray every day in our life to help ourselves and others around us. We also have to go to church to commune with other individuals to help us, to help each other out. And then also, too, you got to read your Bible so you can get closer to God, too. And you also have to forgive those who have hurt you. Just like it says in the Bible, if you don't forgive, then God won't forgive you, and you'll be judged by the standard that you've used.
So, in your book, do you take us into hell and tell us what it was like there?
Yes, yes. I was on the operating table, and they had me in there. They did like the 4 bypasses on my heart, like open heart surgery. And then they closed me up, and I flatlined. I died right on the operating table there. They opened my chest back up, and shot my heart 3 times directly to revive me. During the time I was dead, I was in hell, and there was demons, and it was a dead forest. And there was stuff in the trees. This black stuff was in the trees, and there's just things I just knew. I don't know how I knew. I just did. Like in the black stuff, I knew if I touched it, I knew it would hurt me. I knew that the demons were going to keep me there. So when I started to think, that's it, I screwed up and all that. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I love God. I love Jesus. I love my family, my children. So I started to pray. And I said, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Please take these demons away so they don't harm me or anybody else. Well, demons would vanish in front of me. But the thing is, there were so many. There's tens of thousands of them. As far as I could see demons in this forest. Some of them looked human. Some looked like real small and that. They were different sizes. Some were very deformed. And like I said, the ones that looked human, if it wasn't for the horns, claws they had in the eyes, that the way they looked like a human being. We took that stuff away. So as I kept praying, they would vanish, but they kept coming. And I knew if I didn't get rid of them, if I didn't get out of there, they were going to keep me. So I knew if I fell asleep, they had me. So I was fighting sleep because I was tired. And I kept praying. And eventually one of the human-looking ones came and sat on my bed next to me and started torturing my hand. I could feel the pain from him doing that. And I actually had to direct my prayer directly to him to get rid of him. And then I kept saying this prayer to get rid of him. Eventually, I just couldn't stay awake any longer, and I fell asleep. When I woke up again, I was in a cave. In the cave, there was different types of demons. These ones looked like a ghost, all white, and they had the horns and stuff like that, and they were floating above me, and they had the reddest eyes I've ever seen on anything. And I knew that they were going to try and keep me there also. And I thought that first, it's like, oh, you screwed up, Ron, you're done. It's like, they got you now. And I started thinking, no, wait a minute. I love God. I love Jesus. I love my wife and my children, my family, my mom. So I started to pray again. And I asked, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Please take these demons away, Father, so they don't harm me or anybody else. Well, the demons started to melt. And the thing is, I was kind of like in a laid down position, and they were above me. So when they were melting, they were right on top of my chest, and I could feel the pressure and the pain from it. So I said the prayer again. I said, Please, Father, take these demons away from me further, faster, because they are hurting me. And eventually he did, and other things happened during that time too. And but a bright light came into the cave, and I started to wake up. I started to hear the doctors and nurses, and I woke up in the ICU.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found out from the doctors and nurses there that I was the miracle child that year, because eventually when I started to, I was able to get up and walk around a little bit. I met my doctor who did the actual surgery. And he just said to me, he says, You should not be here. Straight to my face. He says, I don't know how you're here, but he says, you should not be here. I'm telling you, somebody upstairs like you a lot. And I was just thinking to myself, I said, yeah, God. So,
The only question that I have
mhm.
is the power of the mind. And how do you know? How do you know that this was truly a spiritual experience or just your brain going between the medication, between all of the stress that you were under, between, the
Yeah, I
operations?
hear you. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we
Well,
know?
let me tell you one thing. My wife, okay, she was thinking she didn't really want to believe me because my wife was actually an atheist.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, after this experience and everything, now she's a true-blooded Christian, follows God and everything, prays all the time, reads her Bible, just like I do.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? It's the anesthesia. It affected your mind and all that, and you were just seeing these things, right? And I kept telling her, I says, no. I says, I don't know how I know. I just know I was there. I saw this. And when I came home from the hospital, and I was in a 3-month recovery before I had to go back to work again, I was sitting down, I turned on the TV, and I found this show on. And they were talking about people's afterlife, people who went to heaven and all that, right? And I started watching it. I said, it's pretty cool. It was interesting to watch. And eventually, this person, my wife's in the kitchen, I'm sitting down, and this guy comes on. He starts saying about his experience in hell and a dead forest. And it's exactly the same thing that I said. Yeah, and I looked at my wife and I says, I told you I was there. I know it.
So that's what convinced you.
That's what convinced my wife. I knew that's where I was at.
Right.
Because these demons, they were out to get me. They wanted me to keep me there.
Yeah.
That's their mission in life. Is because demons, they hate us. They truly hate mankind because we were just like in the original story of when Lucifer tried to take over from heaven. They were jealous of that mankind was put above them.
Right.
And because of that, he wanted to take over.
Do you go out and talk about this?
Not my book yet, but I told my original pastor who was there, Mark, about my afterlife experience. And I actually got baptized there too when I was ready to do that too. Because when I was in the hospital, I wasn't baptized. I wanted to get baptized when I was in the hospital. Then the doctor said, we can't do that. You got all these tubes. I said, let's find a way for me to get baptized. So they couldn't do it, but eventually I got out of the hospital, and my mom arranged for me to go to her pastor and have him do it. And 2 guys held me up while he baptized me there.
Gosh.
And I'm trying to do as much as I can. I was thinking about actually going to the radio station, Christian radio station, and ask them if I could talk about my book on the air with them.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. The other thing I learned from my experience too was that we're all put through a test. We're being tested every day to find out if we're worthy to go to heaven and all that. I mean, just like Job was tested by Satan when he went to God and asked if he could, truly test him, and told him, well, you can test him, but you don't kill him. And he did. And Job passed the test, showing that he was truly a man of God. So we're gonna suffer. Satan's gonna come after us, and he's gonna try and keep you away from God and all that. Jesus, but through Jesus Christ is the only way that you could find God.
Well, listen, you take care of yourself, all right?
All right, thank you.
Sheri Palmer is back on the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable with a second edition of her children's book entitled Sparkplug, an endearing dog story. So, Sheri, tell us a little bit about this dog that had such a huge impact on your life.
It's a story about my pet Rottweiler as a child growing up on a dairy farm. And it's about his life on the farm and all his quirky little things he did. And his interesting life, and he was quite a character. He had a very interesting life, and he did a lot of amazing things. So the second edition is when he's older, and the first edition is when he first came to the farm as a puppy.
So in the first edition, you cover how your grandfather was reluctant to accept the gift. He was a gift to your grandfather, correct?
Yes, because he was a Rottweiler. And in New York, Rottweilers were only around junkyards or, car lots. They were used only strictly for guard dogs and fighting, illegal fighting. So he had an idea that the Rottweiler wouldn't make a good family pet or a farm guard dog or a farm herding dog, which he needed. And so he was reluctant to take on a Rottweiler.
So your first book talks about how he finally did take on the Rottweiler, and the dog was great around children, right? Wasn't that one of the concerns?
Yes, he wasn't only great around children, he was great around the other animals. He seemed to have a unusual love for everything. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. He just was a happy fella. But yeah, he made a very good house pet. I mean, he was a very loving pet.
Right. And he ended up, herding the animals and like doing everything a farm dog would do. So where did you leave off the first book?
I left off where he had got an award for being a search and rescue dog. My sister had ran away from home and he found her. And so the little town that I lived in had 99 people. They all got together and made him a little coat saying he was a rescue dog.
How did he find her?
He just had a knower. This dog had a knower that you wouldn't believe.
A knower?
A knower. Yeah, I wouldn't call it psychic, but I would call it that he knew things before they happened. He knew things that no one else even suspected. He knew, and he warned people beforehand. Just different little things. If you read the book, you'll see what I mean. He was very intelligent. He had a knower. He knew things ahead of time and prevented them.
So at the end of the first book, he gets an award for finding your sister who ran away from the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens in the second book?
Well, quite a few different times he saved the lives of people, and he saved the lives of some of the farm animals. He was an amazing dog. For instance, the mailman, he never bothered the mailman, but all of a sudden he started chasing the mailman every morning. He would come back from his daily routine around the farm in time to chase the mailman after he left the mail. And he kept trying to bite the back rear left tire every day. He did this for a couple weeks, and Grandpa couldn't get him to stop. He tried everything and couldn't get him to stop. And one day he finally did bite through that tire, and come to find out, they fixed the tire and he stopped chasing the mailman. So my grandfather thought he must have heard that tire leaking. And if you knew where we lived in Allegheny County, huge wood area, small little gravel dirt roads, windy, turny roads on hills. And this mailman, he loved to drive fast. So by him biting through that tire probably saved his life because he had to get a new tire. Grandpa got him a new tire. So, it probably saved his life.
So when he bit through the tire, they found that there was an already existing leak?
Yeah, it was already leaking. It's going to blow, the way he was driving. I'm amazed that it lasted that long.
So once again, Sparkplug had a feeling.
Yeah, he had a feeling. Yeah. Yeah. He saved the guy's life, and the man didn't even realize that. We had a rabid ram that was coming down the road, and everyone was busy doing their thing. They didn't even notice this big, burly, big horn animal butting everything, all foaming at the mouth. Well, Sparkplug kept him at bay, wouldn't let him come down to the farm. And he sat there until people finally noticed. Grandpa got in his pickup and went up and put put spark plug in the pickup and tied the ram up so he couldn't go down near the farm animals and stuff. So saved a lot of, if that thing had bit any of the farm animals, rabies would have went through the whole farm animal
Yeah.
deal. The dog, he taught me important life lessons throughout my life. He was diligent. He had love for everybody. He was happy for being alive. He enjoyed making people happy. He loved to help. There's a lot of life lessons with the book, but I wanted to be happy, entertaining, and maybe be the book. Have you ever had the book, like the little engine that could? I mean, that was my favorite, the little red engine. When you're a child, you adopt a book that kind of stays with you all your life, and you think about those lessons.
Right.
I'm hoping that Sparkplug is one of those books that stays with these little folks and gives them an outlook on what reality really is about. You have hard work, daily routine, determination, just do it. It's a good book for everybody. I think even people in nursing homes that aren't well, they would love hearing the story of Sparkplug. He had an unusual life. He had an interesting life. Not like most domestic dogs. The most they get to do is, go to the beach with their family or, look out the window all day. They don't get much chance to be themselves and do things like a dog would do normally if you let them.
Well, if you're on a farm, you can do that. If you're in New York
Yes.
City, not so much. But,
Right. They can do what they want when they want. It's wide open. Go for it.
right. How long did Sparkplug live?
He had a very happy, long life. Healthy, too.
Have you been able to read this book to children?
I have friends that have told me about their children. All the children love it. And Barnes and Noble right here in town. I'll be going there. And then there's a little mom and pop bookstore on the other side of town, and I'm going to go there.
Okay, so you will be out talking about Sparkplug.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Listen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Sheri.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on your show.
You got it. Michael Worrall and Sheri Tills want to help you make your life better with their book, Next 24. Discover happiness and true joy in your life while you create a legacy. So you spell next, NXT 24. What do you mean by that?
What are you going to do with the next 24 hours of your life? What are some steps you're going to take to get out of the dark spot and the hole that you're in? It's the ultimate personal development book. It's to reach out and give people some hope, especially in times we're going through right now.
What made you guys decide, we have to write this book and we have to write it right now?
For several reasons. One, it was written right during the COVID period when we just observed so many people angry in the community, suffering, and how that time period affected us in our lives. And then realizing that once we were getting into our early 60s, just how much time has gone by that we allowed maybe the world's negativity, the darkness side of it, where you have all this anger and frustration in the workplace that we never really grew up ready for. We were never taught or trained how to react to all this stuff at once.
So is this a self-help book? How do you lay out the book?
Well, no, even though it can overlap and sound like a self-help book, it's more of trying to tell a story of our lives. And we realized if we feel this way, if we're going through it, other people feel it too. So we're about sharing stories and about, okay, over a period of time, what are you going to do to try to make your life better before it's too late? Life is too short. It starts out with a story, which is the story of our lives and the things that we recognize now of what we needed to do or what we desired to do to make change.
What was like a pivotal moment, in your life?
Well, the pivotal moment was during COVID, when you come home so angry and frustrated. See, I was working for the city as a city bus driver, and you'd be amazed how when you pick up people that they're just constantly angry at the bus. And I would actually see fights break out on the bus. And I'm just thinking that this isn't right. This behavior, what's going on here? This is not the way life was intended to be. And if you start listening to certain motivational speakers, or there was one called Les Brown that talks about your deathbed. And he talks about, imagine being around your bed and your hopes and dreams are standing around you saying that we were always here, but you never acted on those dreams. You never acted on those ideas. And now we must die with you. That's the pivotal moment.
How are you offering help to people through your book?
It's just taking through showing them some examples of what the first step is. I mean, so many people are afraid or will not take that first step. It's just, okay, reflect back into your past. That what's got you angry? What are you mad about? What are you not doing? I mean, they really have to look in the mirror, look inside themselves, realizing that, hey, I can start again. I may have messed up in the past, but that doesn't have to define me. We try to be facilitators in the book, really. It's like, try to get people. Have you noticed yourself? Have you noticed in the world today, people don't gather and talk. They don't communicate. They don't in communities, or neighbors don't get along with neighbors. And the idea is that, let's start and just reflect. What are you feeling in the moment? What's happened in your past that may be holding you back? And we try to get people to begin to talk and reflect and answer some of these questions.
Is there a workbook?
There is within the workbook. There's a 25-page workbook where the hardest step is the beginning of just simply sitting down and let's take a short evaluation of your life. The hard question to answer is, if you continue to live your life the way you're living it now, are you going to die a happy individual, or are you going to die a person who has left a life unfulfilled? What's your legacy going to be? So we try to get people to think about that, to answer that tough question.
We talk about in the book some of the practical things, and it's just little things, making a dream board when you get up in the morning, doing a little bit of journaling, doing a little bit of reading, whatever motivates you. If you're a spiritual person, devotional. If you aren't real spiritual, there's a lot of motivational things you can read, or motivational things you can find on YouTube. Just little things like that.
The book
Right.
tries to point out about how many things we have in common, whether it's our family, our religion, our health. We have a lot of things in common,
Right.
but yet we don't seem to solve problems together.
No.
And the world just continues to go down this dark path. There is a different way.
Well, do you think social media is a part of that?
Absolutely.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
So especially with the young kids. We talk to a lot of the young kids. They are so full of anxiety and stress. So simply the book tries to just offer small steps that can have big results.
One of the big questions our authors have, those who want to write but haven't been able to get over whatever hurdles they're facing to actually sit down and write a book, is the marketing. And it sounds like to me that you've got some pretty good ideas on getting your book out there and letting people know all about it.
Well, I knew that if I just wrote a book, it's on the shelf, it's just going to sit on the shelf.
Right.
We are doing our own podcast through the book. We got offered a radio show in Lincoln on 93.7 The Ticket. Well, we do an hour show every Sunday morning at 7 a.m.
That's great.
Plus, we do workshops once a month with people willing to come to the library. And it's a meet and greet, sit down. And the simple thing is just start having a conversation. We just see ourselves as facilitators, asking the questions to get people to start communicating together. And we want to bring some awareness and some comprehension. And we hope that someone will take something from the book and begin to make some positive changes in their lives. And hopefully that they'll live a life that they never thought possible, and it'll be a better life.
Great. You going to keep writing?
Yeah, we hope to get people through the book. And if people are interested, I'd like to get about 25 people who actually did the book, did the workbook, and that'd be willing to write their short stories and compile it in a book together.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
And a lot of, with our radio show too, is we have been lining up different guests from different walks of life, and we're having them on and we're talking with them, and we're hearing their stories of how they got to where they're at, some of their struggles.
It's just giving people proof, hey, you can do it too.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's where that next 24 comes in. It's just, if you can just each day get a little better and a little better and a little better. We have a good friend at the radio station who almost died because he had 27 blood clots. He counts his days as a blessing. He's about 60 years old, so he takes 60 times 365 days, and every day he mentions on the radio that he's been here for like 22,950 days.
But he celebrates. He takes the time to
he
celebrate
celebrates.
every single day, every new day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, take a look at our website.
Okay. What's your website?
Next24book.com.
Okay.
That'll give you all the information.
Our podcasts are on YouTube under Next 24, and that's under 93.7 The Ticket. Our show on that is called What's Next? What's NXT?
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.